The highest honor awarded by the South Carolina Athletic Trainers Association is the Fred W. Hoover Award of Excellence. This award honors members that have given unselfishly to the association and its membership for many years.
Hey everyone, my name is Erin Bryant, and I have the pleasure of interviewing with 2019 Fred Hoover Award winner Kent Atkins today. Kent, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Kent Atkins, and I'm currently the Assistant Athletic Director for NCAA Compliance at Lander University in Greenwood, South Carolina. I was born and raised in Raleigh, North Carolina. Went to school, undergraduate at Appalachian State University, and then finished there and went to University of South Carolina and got my master's at South Carolina. Finished there in 1994, and then I was just looking for a job. Didn't know a thing about Lander. They had a job opening. I knew some people that knew some people, and I was lucky to get a job here. I was their first certified athletic trainer here at Lander. They had one before, but he wasn't BOC certified. And I was lucky enough to get a job and didn't know how long I'd be here, but 27 years later, I'm still here.
And you've been at in South Carolina since grad school?
Yes, yep.
Nice.
Yeah, my GA position at South Carolina brought me down to the state, and I never left.
Oh, cool. All right. So how did you first get involved in like volunteering with athletic training?
Well, in high school, like a lot of us that get into the athletic training profession, I love sports, grew up around sports, played sports, got to high school, realized I wasn't going to be good enough to probably play college and really not play the last few years of high school. And I figured I wanted just to be involved, whether it was a manager or something on the athletic training side. And I met a guy who was at my high school. His name was Ron Reed, and he was the athletic trainer at the high school. And we became friends. And he said, "Hey, why don't you help me learn about the profession? Help me on Friday nights with football games. Help me with practice." And it was another way just to stay involved. And I fell in love with it. Obviously you got the sports side and the medical side, and he taught me some things, got me involved with some clinics, and it just took off from there.
Cool. Can you talk about like who influenced you throughout the way of the profession?
Well, there's a bunch of them. It'd be hard to name them all, but I would say the main ones, Rod Walters, you may know Rod he was at Appalachian State as a head athletic trainer when I went there as a student. And then when he left to South Carolina, he called me a couple years later, had a graduate position open, asked me if I was interested. I said, yes, I'm jumping on it. And so I went down there, learned a lot from him, met a lot of people in the profession. Andy Massey, who took over for Rod Walters at Appalachian State, learned a lot about him, about being a clinician and dealing with kids and all that in the athletic training room. Dr. Peel, Robert Peel, he was a team ortho doctor at South Carolina when I was there. Learned a lot from him on dealing with kids as well, and the patience that he would have in evaluating student athletes and things of that nature. So those are three. Jeff Parsons. Jeff was a full-time assistant athletic trainer at South Carolina when I came down as GA. Learned a lot, worked under him a lot when I first got there. Then he moved over to basketball after that. But those four, I guess, were some of the main ones I learned a lot from profession-wise and how to work different situations and deal with people.
Can you kind of talk about any challenges you may have faced throughout, like, going from like maybe like a grad school to the like actually working in the profession?
Being on your own, you
Yeah.
didn't have that safety net of the head athletic trainer. You were the one making the decisions.
Yeah.
You were the one calling the parents if there was a problem. You were the one going to the AD if you had a problem, maybe with a coach or whatever. So, the bucks finally stopped with you, and you had to kind of, you had to buck up, or your situation wasn't going to get any better, or whatever situation it might be. So that was probably the biggest challenges in organizing things and making sure things work right, and your physicals are organized right, and there's a whole different things you got to do throughout that process in the summer to get ready, whether it's ordering supplies, just knowing all that came on you versus somebody else. And because if something slipped through the cracks, then it was going to not make for a happy time.
Right. How did you overcome these like challenges? Just kind of with experience, or did you go about it different ways?
Probably experience, and I'm an organized person anyway. I don't like surprises. That's one of the things I learned from those guys that I mentioned earlier. Don't hit me with surprises. I'd rather know up front, and I try to work my way that way now. But just trying to stay organized, and I want to know what's going on, you know, and that would help me keep me focused and on track with the challenges that came about. Yeah.
So kind of to switch gears, in what ways has athletic training like evolved over your time?
Oh, wow. I mean, yeah. Going back to the knee, I mean, and all the tests that you have to learn nowadays, and you know, when we don't have it now, but we had an undergraduate curriculum at the time when I first came here. It was back then you had two ways. You had a curriculum or you had an internship route, and we had an internship route. Eventually we got the curriculum approved, but just the learning as a preceptor back then about, you know, because you got students coming through and you got to check skills and things of that nature. And these are tests like I've never heard of before. So the challenge was to educate yourself, you know, just like the students were, because, you know, they're looking at you. Am I doing this right? Am I not doing it right? And here I am as a head athletic trainer with all these other responsibilities. I don't have time to pull out a book a lot of times to read. I mean, I would go to our program director and say sometimes, hey, show me how you do this test. I never heard of it. You know, so just keeping up with the changing education system the last, you know, it's really changed a lot last 10, 15, 20 years.
Right.
So that's probably one of the biggest things to keep up with was the education side.
Would you say like having to learn kind of like on the spot from students has made you a better athletic trainer?
It did. I learned a lot watching them. It did. And helping teach classes, you know, made me go back through material too. I would teach one a semester. So it may be something if I didn't use it much, I might have lost it, but forcing me to teach those classes and help me go back and learn that material too. So, and learning from them, that's exactly right. And I'm like, God, they have to know so much more than I did coming through. And it's, you know, some of it I didn't really agree with, I'll be honest with you, but you know, that's the way the education side changed, and I understand where we're wanting to go with the profession and what kids knew. I didn't want to be a doctor either, and I felt like you were headed down that path sometimes of what they needed to know. But anyway, it was good. I did learn a lot from them through the years. I did.
What do you envision the next steps of the growth in athletic training to be?
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. You know, with all the changes and the expectations that what athletic trainers need to be able to know and do, and you know, whether it's concussion side of things or third party reimbursement. I mean, that's a golly, I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough question.
Okay, I know you mentioned that there was like internships whenever you were in school. So recently they've been bringing up like residencies for entry-level master students like myself. Would you say that we would be leaning more towards that, and would that be like a positive like thing to the profession?
I think so. Yeah. So that, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but the residency would be something that is kind of like a GA position. It's a position to gain more experience after they go through the entry-level master's. I think that's a good idea. I think because of, in my opinion, the way things have been shortened up so much with the 2-year master programs versus 3 years. So like our program was 3 years undergrad. I think it's important. In my opinion, again, I'm not sure the kids get as much. I know the hours are much different now too. And I'm not sure they get the experience that we got. Now they got more information. Yes. They got all the book stuff. That's great. More than we ever got. But there's something to be said for getting that experience in the field, in the clinical setting. And I feel like maybe that's been cut back some a little bit. Mm-hmm. So the residency side, going into some kind of residency program, you know, again, but kids are in a different part of life then too. Yeah. And so that may be hard. You know, you've got an undergraduate degree, now you've got your master's, you're ready to work and make money, which I get completely. You're not going to make probably as much money with a residency program as you would a full-time job. So I think maybe each situation is going to be different. Right. With each kid about whether they feel like they need to do that from a skills standpoint. But you know, I you know, my graduate position at Carolina, again, was back when it was so different. We you know, I got certified right after I got down there, but we were given so much responsibility to do on our own, you know, even though we were working under the head athletic trainer.
Yeah.
it just allowed me to learn so much. I wasn't dependent on that person, and that helped me a lot. I think maybe a residency program would help those in that type of situation.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I feel like we're leaning more towards that once we get established with like an entry level master's, because everybody's in the process of like transitioning right now. So
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
it's something that will come eventually.
Yeah. We were going to do that. We had a great undergrad program, and our numbers were small, but our pass rate was 100%. I mean, it was really good.
That's good.
But we had some financial issues, and we were going to transition, and then we had a presidential change in presidents, and so we never did change it over. I wish we had, because we had a good program. It just, for whatever financial reasons, I guess we weren't able to do it.
Yeah. So the athletic training profession has like been known to like kind of like overwork themselves or feel obligated to work long hours. Over the years, what ways have you been able to find like a balance between family and career?
Yeah, well, that's always a tough one. I mean, when I was, I guess probably see my oldest is now 16, so 17. So my first 7-8 years, we weren't, we didn't have kids, so it was a little bit easier to come and go. But once I came, you had to try to leave your work at work, not bring it home, obviously, and try to find some time in the summertime when things are down and stuff to do family things. Back when I first came to Lander, and then when my wife and I started having kids, we didn't have as many student athletes as we have now, so it was a little bit easier too. So I just tried to leave everything at work. During the summertime, we don't have a lot of kids here, so I can get away a lot easier. So I just, try to make it a point to spend more time then, or invite them to games, bring the family to games, and they can sit right there by the bench and feel like they're still there, even though you may not better pay attention to them as much because you're working, but they still felt a part of it. And it wasn't two separate islands. So I think that's a good thing to try to do, to try to, keep that balance in place.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard, and a lot of people feel like they can't do it, but I feel like you just got to figure out a way to do it, kind of thing.
I think a lot of it depends on your job setting. If I was at a Carolina setting or Clemson setting versus Lander, the pressures are different.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to work the expectations are different, so that can lead to those type of pitfalls. Luckily, in my position, I had a great AD at the time who he is now retired. He would tell you to get home, get out. The expectations, not that you weren't going to do your job, but the expectations weren't off the chart unrealistic either.
Yeah. In what ways do you advocate for athletic training?
Well, I was thinking about that question earlier. Since I've moved into the administrative side of athletics, so I see kind of the different side of things and why things may be done or not done. But I feel like now that I see that side, I'm able to look at things in a different perspective, but also knowing the athletic training side, that if we decide to add sports or if we are making facility changes, I got that athletic training side of my brain too, looking at it in that light as well, to make sure, okay, if we're going to add these sports, we need 3 more athletic trainers. So I have a voice in that. Now, luckily too, my AD is a former athletic trainer, so he sees that as well. But decisions that I see now that I sit in different types of meetings, I look at it to make sure, is this going to have an impact with the athletic training, that athletic trainers that we have here? And if so, we need to address that. So I think that's one way I try to advocate for them, now moving forward.
Nice. How have you been involved in the South Carolina Athletic Training Association?
Well, when I first came into the state, I didn't know it so well. I take that back. I knew a few people, and they introduced me to a few people. And then I guess back in '95, a couple of them said, "Hey, would you want to run for the executive council?" And I said, "Great, yeah, I'd love to do it." So luckily, I got voted in. So I was on the executive council from '98 to 2006. And I was president the last 4 years, which I'm the only president to be two terms, because we had somebody leave. Back then, it was just kind of a succession. It wasn't a vote at each level. Mm-hmm. So you came in as secretary treasurer. If you got a vote of confidence, I think, you could get voted to vice or president-elect, and then you got a vote of confidence to go from president-elect to president. And each one was 2-year terms. So a normal person would be on there 6 years, but the person that was president-elect left right at the end of my first term. So they came to me and said, "Hey, would you do it?" And during the business meeting, I'll never forget it, in 2000, and I guess it'd been 2006, we're at a business meeting, and Danny Poole at Clemson says, "Can't we like to make a motion for you to go another term if you want to do it?" I said, "Heck yeah, I'll do it. I'm the only one that did." So that's kind of a neat thing that nobody can say that, hey, I was a 2-term president, but
right.
But I did that, through so 2008 I finished that, and then it was kind of nice then. And then you're 2 years as a past president, but you really don't do a lot. You're just a sounding board for the current president. But and then I didn't stay as much involved after that, other than just obviously still going to meetings and knowing people and stuff. But that was a long 8 years, but it was an enjoyable 8 years. Met a lot of people, and we got to do a lot of things during that time. I don't think we changed the world, which we didn't set out to do during my time, but we did some things that I was pretty proud of.
What was like one of your best memories from being like a president?
Yeah, one of those, and I was thinking about that earlier today. When I think I wasn't president yet. I might have been still secretary. No, I think I was president-elect. We started doing, I don't know if you have heard of this, the barbecue luncheon for the state legislators. They call it barbecue on the Blat, okay? And so what we would do, and we didn't have any agenda other than we threw this big old barbecue luncheon in Columbia. It was always in February. It was back before they even started doing Athletic Training Month, which I think is the month of March. So it was before that even started, but we would get invite the legislators and their staff just to come through. We had a big display about athletic trainers in the state of South Carolina, what we did. It was an educational piece, and it was all done just in case we needed their help, whether Practice Act change or something. We did. Luckily at that time we didn't. I know they're trying to do some of that now with changing from certification to licensure, but that was one of the things during our period. We really tried to, we had resolutions passed in the House and the Senate, National Athletic Training Day and stuff like that. And then we tried to promote, again, back before March was the month to do it. But that was one of the things I was proud of, that we really tried to reach out to them. And a lot of them knew what we did. A lot of them had no clue. We had a lot of older athletic trainers that knew their senators or their representatives back from their areas because they had worked on them. Barry Atkinson at Lawrence High School, he knew all his representatives because at some point they were students at his school or they were athletes, and he had dealt with them. So that helped obviously spread the message about what we do. But that's probably one of the biggest things I'm proud of is the relationship we try to start with our representatives.
Yeah, I think that's very important in all aspects, of life, just in general.
Yep, I agree.
So to wrap up our interview, I have one last question.
Okay.
What advice would you give today's young professionals that are about to enter the athletic training profession?
Again, I guess it kind of goes back to how some of this has changed from the education side. Don't be afraid to put the time in. I mean, and we see it even before things changed. There are some kids that are just they're clock watchers, and a lot of that's just their personality or whatever you want to call it. It's people being different. But don't be afraid to put the time in. Don't be afraid to work the long hours. That if you're going to be a good athletic trainer, you're going to do that. And I know it's hard to do it, but when you come to school, because you got so many other things going on. But that would be my biggest thing is don't be afraid to ask questions. Again, when I had students that would ask questions, and be engaged, that was a lot better experience for me as a preceptor than it was for somebody that didn't ask anything, and all they did was they felt like all they would do was come in and fill up water and don't be, take initiative. That's a big thing too. You see some kids that don't have much initiative. You see some that have too much initiative, but I'd rather have somebody with too much that's going to ask too many questions versus somebody that doesn't. So that just be involved. Don't be afraid to take the initiative. I'd rather tell you don't do anything than ask you to do something. You know what I mean? That type of thing. That would be probably my main thing.
Thank you. I do want to thank you for taking the time to do this interview with me.